Hey everyone, Mitch coming from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. I've got a fun episode for you today where I'm going to be talking about the tier list rankings in my opinion, okay? And these might differ from what you believe, and that is completely fine. And comment below with your thoughts on the differences in our opinion, or how, like, I got every single one correct that you thought too. So I'm going to be talking about alternative win conditions, and I am talking specifically about alternative win, not alternative loss, which maybe I'll do that on a different day, but like there's already a lot of alternative wins, and it's kind of a distinction where it's like you win the game versus like they lose the game. They're kind of similar, but again, like in a 1v1 format, they might be the same, but in a commander format, in multiplayer, you winning is better than one player losing. So let's jump into it and talk about, in my opinion, the tier list rankings for alternative win conditions. And I will mention that you might see a slight difference on this tier list ranking than other ones, where I did include an F tier on this one because technically there are certain win conditions that don't work in Commander for one reason or another, and we'll talk about why, but I just wanted to include that right there just in case. Regardless, one that definitely does work and very effectively is Maze's End. Interesting one to start on, though. This is a land alternative win condition. Enters the battlefield, tap for 8 colorless, pay 3, tap, bounce it back to its owner's hand, search life for 8, gate card put on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates over names, you win the game. This is one that actually, again, like years and years and years ago, way before there was more gates than just like the 10 gates, this was not impossible to pull off, but it was a lot harder to pull off, I will say, because it was like, oh, okay, you need like those exactly. But if you don't have those, you don't do it. I guess you could like copy them too. That being said, now there are a lot more gates out there, and of course, yeah, there are ways to really speed things up. I mean, there's like one ramp, so like get you like 10 lands from your library, like 10 non-basics you can go get. So yeah, go get those, put them in play, do this. But also there's like scape shift that you can do as well. And again, it's like on a land, so it's a pretty protected, I would say, win condition. Like, it's not the most powerful out of all these. There's obviously some steps you have to work through to actually get this to go. I think this is a good, like, middle-of-the-road option. And again, when I say middle-of-the-road, I mean B tier right now. Because, like, the F tier, not really considering that part of the road, really. So let's just start off with that. I reserve the right to change these as we go, okay? I don't have, like, a sheet over here where I do these. I'm doing these off the cuff, essentially, right now. Because I think it's more fun to do it that way. So you can just get, like, my thought process going with it as well. Versus, like, me, like, being like, this one, that one, mathematically, this one, that one, and let me tell you why, based on these bullet points I wrote down, which is this, which is fine to do it that way too, but just not the way I like to do it. Next up, Helix Pinnacle. Enchantment for a single green mana, Shroud. Okay. Pay X, put X tower counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 more towers counters on it, you win the game. There's a couple different factors when it comes to, like, winning the game with these kinds of cards that you need to consider. One, like, how vulnerable is the win condition? This one does have Shroud, so it is hard to deal with. Like, unless you have, like, a board wipe that gets rid of enchantments, you're not touching this with a spell, essentially, right? You can't target it. Also, another thing when it comes to, like, vulnerability, though, this is an upkeep trigger. So, like, this is like, okay, like, I can have it ready to go, but unless I can get to my upkeep with this in play, I don't win with that. Or, like, an opponent could take me out before that happens, essentially, right? That being said, like, the only condition that matters of this is literally just dumping mana into it. And when it comes to, like, oh, you dump mana into it and you win, yeah, there's plenty of ways to do that. So there are a lot of ways to ramp quite quickly. This is a protected win condition that, again, like, hundreds, I mean, a lot, but, like, I mean, throughout the game, like, if you are building a deck that's, like, ramp, and sure, like, infinite mana will get you there right away. I do think with this being like a protected win condition with like mana being the only requirement to actually win, I do think that this one's probably going to move up to an A tier. Maybe I'll move it down here in a little bit, but like that's where my gut says right now. It does have the upkeep, so maybe it changes with that. Maybe that does change with that, actually. You know what? We're going to move down to the B tier right now because I do think it's just not quite to an A tier. Moving on. Simic Ascendancy. Enchantment for Simic colors. Pay 3, essentially. Put a counter to our creature control. Whenever one or more counters are put on a creature control with that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy, at the beginning of your upkeep, if it has 20 more growth counters on it, you win the game. This one, I mean, again, you can just snap your finger and you're there. Again, you can have just proliferate type effects out there. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I've got like 5 creatures with counters on them. I've got 4 proliferate type effects. proliferate, 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 proliferate. Cool, I'm there. Again, it counts like going big or going wide with this, essentially, or just like one creature getting counters on them, essentially, can do it as well. Proliferate type effects, yeah, there's a lot of ways to work with this. I mean, you proliferate, also get the growth counters on there too at the same time, so keep that in mind. Again, it is an upkeep trigger, so keep that in mind. It's a bit more hard to get there when it comes to that, but yeah, I mean, again, upkeep triggers, I think that does just hold it back a little bit. So let's go. Maybe I'm just gonna have too many in the B tier. Maybe I have to move some of these out, but let's go the B tier for now. Next up, here we go, and this is where it really like spices up quite a bit, because like this is like CDH level of stuff. And I will say, like, I am coming at this with a casual perspective, but yeah, this even in casual is quite easy to win the game, essentially. Thassas Oracle, a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard for blue. And just battlefield top X cards your library, extra devotion to blue, put one of them on top of your library. The rest of them on your library in random order, that doesn't matter. All that matters is if X is greater than equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. Basically, ETB, hey, are you decked? Okay, cool, you win the game. Yeah, it's hard to stop, and it's very, very good. Losing your library can actually be quite easy. I mean, there's like infinite combos, like, oh, okay, I drew through my deck or whatever, essentially. Or just like, I leveled my deck. I have no library. Or Demonic Consultation, of course, is like the, fancy combo of this. That being said, yeah, this is, in my opinion, even at a casual level, definitely S tier when it comes to a win condition. Yeah, having no library, quite easy to get to. Next up, Triskai Decaphile, a 1/3 human wizard for 2 mana in blue. You have a maximum hand size, beginning of your upkeep. If you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. Draw a card for 3 and a blue. I mean, sure, if you've got like infinite mana, cool, you can like get to exactly 13 when you need to, but I mean, all you need really is just like an instant speed X draw spell to get to you the exact amount that you need to get to. So that's really kind of like a way to do it. I mean, or just like draw a decent amount and then like be there and hope that the 6 around so your upkeep. Typically, I mean, a way to, again, like protect it would just be, yeah, instant speed X draw spell right before my turn, hope that it survives up until my upkeep, so we shall see. But yeah, again, like, it's not hard to get to 13 cards. It's more like, can you keep this in play? So let's throw this in the B tier. I do think I'm gonna move Helix Pinnacle back up because again, it does have Shroud. It is protecting that way. Maybe I'm gonna regret that, but we'll keep it there for now. I already moved it back and forth, so we'll see where this ends up. But yeah, Triskai Decaphile right now in the B tier. Next up, Bio Visionary. At the beginning of the end step, if you control 4 or more creatures named Bio Visionary, you win the game. It's just kind of funny because, like, this in Commander would normally be like, that's one that can't work. But, like, yeah, clones are a thing, of course. So, being able to clone this, or, like, use any kind of, like, okay, create a creature token copy of it, and then all of a sudden, like, populate that as well. So, a lot of ways to do that. It is the end step. Again, it's not upkeep. So, it's not like you wait for one trip around the table. So, your opponents, like, have to have, like, instant speed, like, get rid of that or counter something to stop you from doing that. So, keep that in mind. That being said, it's very specific in the way that you win with this by, like, okay, you need to clone it a couple times. So, yeah, this is one. Am I just going to, like, default to, like, B tier this entire time? I hope not. But, like, my gut says right now with this one, because, like, it is on a creature that has, like, no protection, but it is, it's end step, but it's specific, and that's, like, clone effects, which, like, clone effects are a bit more specific than, like, okay, just, like, dump a ton of mana into it, like, draw a bunch of cards. A lot more cards that work with that. This is more like, okay, like, make a creature token copy. Sure, there's populate effects, too, or, like, like, actual clones. It's more limited in that way. So, like, I do think this is more like middle of the road. I hope I don't just end up with all middle of the road and it's like 20 things in the B tier. Mitch, what are you doing? Who knows? Next up, Halo found an artifact for 3 mana in white. Pay a white tap, untap a tap creature you control, make a 1/1. Pay 2 white, tap, untap 2 tap creatures, draw a card. Pay 5 white, tap, untap 15 tap creature control, win the game. Yeah, I mean, like, this is, like, a decent amount of mana, like, total, like, 8 mana in total to do all that, obviously, but you could just have this in play and have 5 mana to go. If you're not in mono white, good luck paying white, unless you've got, like, perfect mana fixing with, like, Chromatic Lantern or whatnot. And also going really, really wide. I mean, it's good. It is good. Like, it's, like, go wide strategy. You got go wide strategy, cool. Utilized in that way. I do think, like, the power level goes down a bit on this because just, like, the application of, like, the kinds of decks that can use it are very specific and that you need to be in a deck that's, like, probably 1 or 2 colors. If not, like, you need to, like, really, really make sure you have a lot of ways to fix your mana completely. Or, I guess, use a lot of treasures as well. That being said, I think, again, even though it is, like, more protected than, like, the creature-based ones, essentially, because, like, an artifact is more protected than, say, a creature, which is less protected. Artifacts are less protected than enchantments, in my opinion, which is less protected than a land, in my opinion. But yes, except for, like, a shrouded enchantment, regardless. Halo found, I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, I'm going to throw this in the C tier, actually. I'm going to throw it in the C tier. Moving on, Eddie. Eddie's got a deck built around Happily Ever After. Don't let Eddie, I mean, I'm not going to give it away. I don't want to give away what deck it is because, like, it's spicy, and I don't want you to be, like, just ready for, like, oh, okay, this is it. This is it. It's a spicy deck, though. Enchantment for 3 mana in white. Whenever it enters the battlefield, each player gains 5, draws a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 5 more colors among opponents you control, there are 6 more card types among opponents you control, and/or cards in your graveyard. Life total is greater than or equal to starting life total, you win the game. That's a lot of requirements. This is one where it's like, again, you have to get your upkeep for that as well, so that's a lot. That's a lot of work to get to there. I mean, it's doable, obviously, and there's, like, things like, again, like, oh, okay, my commander's all 5 colors, so that checks that box. You just need to get a lot of things in your graveyard, though, or cards, permanents in your graveyard. And, or control. So, control as well. I forgot about that. But also, like, life total being greater as well, like, isn't a given. So, yeah, like, there's a lot going on with this one. A lot of requirements. It is more protected being enchantment, but again, it's an upkeep trigger. So, I think this one, again, is probably a D tier. Because it is, like, you can pull it off in Commander, but it is difficult to do so. That being said, I've seen Eddie do it. Next up, Hedron Alignment. This one, unfortunately, I wish there was a way to do this. And let me know. I could be very wrong, but I believe this is just like a non-starter. This is like an F tier just because you literally cannot do this in Commander. I don't believe. Let me know if I'm wrong on this, but like you can get like parts of it, but not all of it. Enchantment for 2 and a blue, hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may reveal your hand. If you do, you win the game if you own a card named Hedron Alignment in exile in your hand in the graveyard on the battlefield. Pay 1 of blue, scry 1. So obviously, like in other formats, like you can have 4 of these, and like you can meet all those requirements. In Commander, you can meet like 2 of the requirements because, I mean, technically you could like copy the enchantment and have 1 in play. But you can't have like a copy of it in your hand or a copy of it in exile or a copy of it in the graveyard. I don't believe. Let me know if there's ways to do this, but I don't believe there's any ways to like get all 4 of those things at the same time, again, in Commander, where you can only have 1 of each card, again, singleton format. So unless you're breaking the rules of Commander, which again, I'm not allowing in this, essentially, like, again, this kind of thing, like, if you ask your friends, like, hey, I want to build a Commander deck around Hedron Alignment, like, are you okay if I have 4 of them in my deck? I think a lot of players are like, sure, why not? Like, it's fun. But again, for this experiment, I'm putting this in the F tier because, again, I think it's a non-starter. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. Maybe let me know there's a way to pull it off, but I don't think that there is. Also, like, again, it is protected, which is nice with enchantment, but also it's an upkeep trigger. That doesn't matter anyways, but yeah, it's an interesting card. Lab Maniac. Okay, I will say right here that I'm not breaking these tiers down to like, okay, S plus or whatever, or S, but like, yeah, this is also an S because it's like the exact same thing as Thassas Oracle, but not quite as good, but still very, very good. 2/2 Hued Wizard for 3 mana and blue. If you draw a card, but your library's no cards in it, you win the game instead. Again, it is, sure, it's on a creature, but also like the condition isn't like upkeep. The condition is, oh, you haven't met? Cool. Do that and you win. And it's not hard at all to like lose your library and then draw a card. There's a lot of ways to do that, essentially. A lot of combos that can do it, or just like, hey, I drew a ton of cards throughout the game. Okay, cool. I lost my library. Awesome. Or I leveled my library. Those kind of things as well. So yes, being able to do this at instant speed, whatever you need to. Again, an opponent's like, oh, okay, I'll try to take out your Laboratory Maniac. You're like, okay, I cast a cantrip. Cool, I win. Next up, Luck Bobblehead. This one's funny. A Bobblehead for 3, an artifact tap, 1 mana of any color. Pay 1, tap, roll X 6-sided dice for X number of bobbleheads you control. Create a tap treasure token for each even result. If you rolled 6 exactly 7 times, you win the game. Okay, so this, I mean, involves luck or manipulation and or luck too at that as well. I believe, and let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, but I believe there's exactly 7 bobbleheads out there, essentially, like different named bobbleheads. So yeah, you could include, again, a singleton format like Commander, each of them, get all 7 out, which is already a big requirement. Of course, there are ways to copy artifacts too, so yeah, you could just copy this, make extra copies of it, and count those as bobbleheads, of course. But yeah, you still need to roll a lot of 6s, which takes a lot of effort to do so. There are a few ways, not too many ways out there that you can manipulate dice though, like, okay, roll additional time or whatnot, or add like to the result or whatever they are. So there are ways to do that. But yeah, like it's really hard to do. So this includes an absurd amount of requirements. It is not F tier because you can pull it off, but it is very, very difficult to do so. So like, I mean, this would probably be like D-. And I'm again with these tiers, like I'm not saying like what like my personal enjoyment would be out of like pulling these off. It's more so like what's most feasible, what's most powerful. So this takes a lot of effort to pull it off. If you ever pull this off, let me know, please, because it's pretty cool. Moving on, Miles Aria, an enchantment for 3 mana and 9. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a counter on each creature you control if you control a creature power 5 or greater. Then gain 10 life if you control a creature power 10 or greater, and the thing that actually matters though, then you win the game if you control a creature power 20 or greater. So again, this is an upkeep trigger. So again, it is like you gotta wait for that to come around. This isn't protected like Helix Pinnacle is, but it is like an enchantment, which in my opinion is harder to deal with than most permanents. There's easy ways to do it, but like most things like, oh, okay, Wrath of God deals with creatures. Very easy. Most vulnerable card type typically is creatures, in my opinion, although Planeswalkers can just be attacked, so there's that too. That being said, yeah, you need to meet a requirement, which is not that hard to meet. Again, like power 20 or greater, there are creatures that are like nearly that, like Yargle essentially is there, or Yargle and Multani, I should say. But also like there's power doubling effects that you could utilize too, like that kind of stuff as well. Also ways to pump, counters, all the things, equipment. There's ways to quickly get there, but also, again, you have to get your upkeep to do that. It's not that expensive of an enchantment, but doesn't protect itself. So I think overall a B tier. Maybe I'm going to like not end up with anything in the A tier, enough things in the A tier. I'm going to regret that, but we're going to go with that right now. Celestial Convergence. This one is an interesting one. It was one that I considered not including in the list, but let me know if I made a mistake on this one, because I do think it is like an alternative win condition technically. Celestial Convergence is an enchantment for 4 mana and white. Comes into play with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, move an omen counter from it. If there are no omen counters on it, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied with the highest life total, the game is a draw, which is interesting. That can just be a draw. So again, it is an alternative win, but it could also be an alternative loss technically, because your opponent could win. It also could be a draw. There are ways to remove those counters quicker, obviously, or just have it come into play with no counters on it. I do believe you'd still need to get your upkeep for that actually to happen, because like, I could be wrong on that. Like, you have to keep removing it if there are no omen counters on it. Maybe, like, actually, let me know in the comments. I should have looked up ahead of time, but I believe, actually, with Solemnity, you could just win right away with it. I think, right? Because it's like, at the beginning of your upkeep, it doesn't say, like, then if there are no omen counters on it. It could just trigger with that once it's out of the omen counters. I could be wrong. Maybe it is an upkeep trigger as well. So with this one, I mean, it's not that hard to, like, have the highest life total, obviously. It is one that does require, like, maybe a combo potential with Solemnity to, like, get down to no counters on it immediately. Let me know. I could be wrong on this again, because like if that is part of like the upkeep, they could have like reworded it too as well. If it is part of that whole upkeep where you have to like get your upkeep for this to actually matter, it is less powerful. But I believe that this could just be like ETB, remove if it has no counters on it, like you just win if you have the highest life total. So I'm taking that into account. Okay, I could be very wrong on that if it's not that. I'm going to say this is an A tier one. If it is like Solemnity combo, okay, I just play this. It has no counters on it. I have the highest life total. I win, okay? If it's not that you have to wait to the upkeep, it would move down to the B tier, in my opinion. It's not that hard to, again, the win condition is quite easy. Do you have the highest life total? Cool. If you do, you win. But yeah, you have to actually move the counter. So actually, this one, if to move the counters, the only way to move it would be down to like a C, but you have ways to move counters. So yeah, I think overall, I'm going to put in the A. I could be so wrong on that again. Let me know if Solemnity works with it or not. Next up, Chance Encounter. Enchantment for 4 mana in red. Whenever you win a coin flip, put a luck counter on it at the beginning of your upkeep. If chance counter has 10 or more luck counters on it, you win the game. Again, this is an upkeep trigger, so there is that to it. Winning a coin flip is something that you can manipulate in some ways by just flipping more coins to get more chances to win more flips. And also, there are ways like, okay, like Krark's Thumb, essentially, and Krark's Other Thumb, I guess, if your friends will let you play that, but that's technically not in consideration for this. Flipping more than once. Yeah, I mean, there are ways to flip, but also, even if you just win one flip, you can just proliferate essentially a lot of times. It does take some time to build that up. But yeah, again, it is an upkeep trigger to actually win that. So again, I think I will include this one essentially, again, in the B tier, which is getting quite full, and I probably need to adjust. But right now, we're sticking to B tier. Darksteel Reactor. Artifact for 4. It's indestructible. Beginning of your upkeep, may put a charge counter on it. 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So this one is one that I'm just going to immediately actually put in the A tier, actually. Because this is one that, yeah, it's an upkeep trigger to get that first charge counter on it. But, like, after that, it doesn't require you to actually be an upkeep trigger to win. So this can win whenever. Again, whenever it's got 20 more counters on it, you win the game. And obviously, we just got a lot more proliferate, essentially, right? And there's also ways to put, like, double the counters on it, too. So we got proliferate effects that are helping out with this. It's indestructible, so it is very protected. Stick and play. Get it in play, get at least one charge counter on it, and just get going with that. It's quite easy to get a number of charge counters on this quite quickly, again, with counter doubling effects, also proliferate effects. So yeah, sure, you can get to the upkeep, keep doing that as well. But yeah, it's quite easy to pull off, and essentially for the right deck, you can pull off quite quickly, and it's hard to deal with being indestructible. So if your opponents don't have someone that can either bounce it or exile it, they're stuck, and you're just going to win the game eventually. So there you go. Moving on, Epic Struggle. Enchantment for 4 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, you control 20 more creatures, you win the game. Again, pretty easy to actually get to that requirement, especially these days where you've got cards that are like, oh, okay, I make a number of creatures based on the other creatures my opponents have at instant speed right before my turn for 7 mana, essentially. So, yeah, or like 3 for 1 player or 2 or whatever it is. I can't remember what that card's name is right now. It's missing, but it's in white. Let me know in the console. It's got Strive as well. But yeah, there are ways to just like out of nowhere make a ton of creatures or like double up your creatures out of nowhere. So you can very easily do that. Again, it is an upkeep trigger. So because of that, let's move that to the B tier. I should probably start moving some other things that are like just, I don't know, easier to deal with down a little bit. But I know I'm going to be adjusting things down from the B to the C at some point. But we're going to hold off for now. Jace Wheeler Mysteries, a 4 starting loyalty Jace Planeswalker for 4 mana in blue. Draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Literally, just, again, same thing essentially as Lab Maniac, essentially, right then and there. Thassas Oracle is probably, again, a tier above those. It's like S plus, you know, S, whatever they are. They're all going to be the same for this practice, though. +1, target player with the top 2 cards of their library in their graveyard, draw cards. This can actually draw you that card to win the game. -8, draw 7 cards, and if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Again, ways to just win the game with it. But yeah, you basically can just like play this with no library, +1. You win. Congratulations. So yeah, there you go. Being able to, yeah, just win with this out of nowhere can be great. And, I mean, again, not really out of nowhere because, like, it's got combos. It's got ways to win right away. For all the other reasons, the other 2 are in the S tier. Yeah, like, having no library is probably the easiest win condition when it comes to all of these. Moving on. Mechanized Production. Enchant artifacts you control at the beginning of your upkeep. Create a token's copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts of the same name as one another, you win the game. It's actually not too hard to get to that. Again, it is an upkeep trigger, so keep that in mind. Obviously, popular effects are just things that have the same name. Obviously, you can get more and more of those in play. Lots of support for artifacts these days as well. It is an upkeep trigger, because this does say then. So again, that's why I think that Celestial Convergence one is like, again, it doesn't say then. So like, just whenever, I think. I could be so wrong on that. Maybe they updated so it does say then now. But yes, this one, again, you have to get your upkeep. It is like on something, so that is something to keep in track of as well, like, but it is on artifacts, so it's a 2 for 1, but still, like, it's giving you value. That doesn't really come into play in like considering it, but like B tier, oh gosh, it's coming way too full. Next up, Mortal Combat. Enchantment for 4 mana in black. At the beginning of your upkeep, if 20 or more creature cards are in your graveyard, you win the game. Yeah, I mean, this one is quite easy to pull off. There are ways to just literally put your library into your graveyard, like Morality Shift, or just like ways to like mill yourself a ton, or like draw half your library, discard cards as well. There's ways to pretty easily get to, or like, you know, what's that one commander that can like search for like number of spirits that you, whatever number of spirits you want to put them in your graveyard. So like that as well. Iname, a name, whatever that name is. Yeah, there are ways just to literally fill your graveyard with 20 creatures out of nowhere. So do that. But yes, you need to keep on the upkeep. So because again, it's like an upkeep, you have to like wait for it. This one is, in my opinion, a B tier win condition. Next up, Ramses Assassin Lord, a 4/4 Death Toucher with Human Assassin for 4 mana in Dimir. Other assassins get +1. Player loses the game. If they were attacked this turn by assassin you control, you win the game. Very specific card. I mean, it's a spicy way to win the game. It's not nearly as hard as, like, let's say, in my opinion, like Happily Ever After or the Bobblehead. I don't think. I do think it's not quite B tier, though. Like, this is on a creature, which is easy to deal with. It's also, like, you have to take a player out and then also have attack from assassin this turn. So, like, there are conditions to it. Yeah, so, like, I will say I think this one probably goes in the C tier. And maybe just because I want to fill the C tier up a little bit, but I do think it's a C tier. Next up, Test of Endurance. Beginning of your upkeep, if you've got 50 or more life, you win the game. 4 mana enchantment. This one is very easy to pull off in Commander because it's like you just need to get to 50, which is just 10 above where you start, obviously. In any other format, it's like, okay, I gotta gain 30 life and then do this. Again, it is upkeep, so you have to actually, like, keep your life total up until your next turn. So you can't just, I mean, if you have, like, Vidal Canori, sure, you can, like, flash this into play before your turn. Like, ha ha ha! But still, this one, I will say, I do think, again, I really need to adjust my B tier, but we're just gonna go with the B tier because I do think, again, like, you need to keep it around. You know what? I'm going to adjust some things right now. Do I do it? Do I do it? Okay, we're going to take a little break. We're going to adjust things right now because the B tier, not that it can't get, like, super full, and maybe that is correct, but, like, I don't know. Like, there's other ones that are, like, easier to pull off these days, like Scape Shift plus, like, Maze's End, which is, Maze's End is decent under diff because it is a land. So we'll throw that one up there. Are there any other ones I want to put down right now? Triskai Decaphile is on a creature, so, like, that is removable compared to the other things as well. More removable, I would say. So let's move that one down. And I'll feel a little bit better with this right now, so we're just going to keep that right there. I'm going to feel a little bit better. I mean, there's a lot of, like, middle-of-the-road ones, I should say, but We're gonna stick with that. Okay. Azor's Electors. This is a really funny one. 3/5 human advisor for 5 mana and Azorius. Getting for upkeep, get a filibuster counter on this, and if it's got 5 more filibuster counters on it, you win the game. Whenever a source steals coverage, you remove a filibuster counter from it. This one, like, again, you just need 1 counter on it to get it going. You still need to, like, actually, like, get your upkeep with this in play to actually even get that going. But then you also need to, like, probably proliferate this. You really have to protect yourself a ton to not lose those counters. But yeah, even if you just get to, like, your end, or the end step before your turn and, like, proliferate 4 times with the 1 counter on or whatever it is, cool, you can get there and win. It's a lot of conditions to meet for that, but again, it's like not the hardest. It's not the hardest out there, but it's definitely not the easiest. Again, on a creature, upkeep. Let's throw that in the C tier. Moving on. Battle Wits. Unfortunately, I think the rules committee should just make an exception for this one, but I understand like the consistency of the format being like 100 cards. Okay, I understand that. But come on, Battle of Wits deck is fun. Enchantment for 5 mana and blue at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 200 more cards in your library, you win the game. Again, it's a non-starter like Hedron Archive or whatever that one is, Hedron Alignment. Because literally you cannot pull this off in Commander because you can only have 100 total cards unless you have a companion or whatever. But like, anyways, it's not your deck anyways. So you can't meet the requirement ever because you can't have that many cards in your deck. So therefore, it is a non-starter. You can never win the game in this way in Commander. Let me know if I'm somehow wrong on this, but I do not believe so. But yeah, F tier just because you can't do it. So there you go. Next up, Liliana's Contract. It's an enchantment for 5 mana and black, enters the battlefield, draw 4, lose 4. That's already just nice right there. But yeah, at the beginning of your upkeep, you control 4 more demons of different names, you win the game. Quite easy to pull off. Obviously, we're getting more and more demon support lately. Demon Tribal is a thing, so there you go. Or just like, yeah, Changelings. There you go. That pulls it off too. So yeah, again, its requirement is not that hard, but again, it is upkeep. If it was just like, hey, ETBs, if you've got 4 more demons, you win the game. Cool, that's very easy to pull off. I'd say this one, though, is B tier, middle of the road again. A lot of these, like, and they have, like, kind of like the same design for a lot of these because they're like, okay, alternative wins shouldn't just come out of nowhere. Those are higher up on the list, typically, with these, like, not upkeep, except for, I guess, Helix Pinnacle, which maybe should be adjusted back down. But it is upkeep trigger, essentially, so you have to wait for it. You have to keep this around. You literally made a requirement. The requirement's not that hard to meet, though. Moving on. Near-death experience. Speaking of which, enchantment for 5 mana and white. Beginning of upkeep, you have exactly 1 life. You win the game. It's a risky one, but it's not that hard to pull off. In fact, there are certain commanders like my Selenia Dark Angel deck, like very easy to pull off. Are you at an odd life total? Cool. You can just get to this automatically then because your commander has pay 2 life, bounce it back to your hand. So then you can respond to that to like keep doing it again and again and again and again to just lose any variable of 2 essentially amount of life. So again, if you're at 41, cool. Now you're down to 1. You lose all that life, instant speed right before your turn, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I win the game. So as long as this stays in play again, it is a requirement that you can meet. Or again, like you have like certain creatures out there, certain things out there, like pay 1 life, do this. And you can keep doing that repeatedly as many times as you want. So by doing that, you can very easily get to exactly 1. It's risky, sure, because if someone like lightning bolts you, not many people are playing like any burn type effects though. Obviously, there's a risk style effects out there, like Azulport Cutthroat and play with a free sacrifice out would take you out. That being said, yeah, it's still quite easy to get to the requirement. That being said, again, it's an upkeep trigger, so it's not just like win the game on the spot. Next up, Revel in Riches. Enchantment for 5 mana. Whenever a creature opponent controls dies, create a treasure token. Tap for 1 mana of any color. Beginning of upkeep, you control 10 or more treasures. You win the game. Again, very, very easy to actually get to that. Again, probably on the easier side of something to get to because like these days we have so much treasure support. It's ridiculous. This also just gives you treasures. If you just play this in board wipe, you probably have 10 treasures. So there you go. So meeting the requirement is not hard. That being said, again, upkeep trigger. You got to keep this in play. Obviously, they're designing cards like this to ensure that you can't just win right away. It is a B tier. We're running into that a lot. But yeah, I think it's like there's something very similar with all of them where it's like, okay, like you don't really have to work that hard to get to the requirement, but you have to work hard in keeping it in play. Bearing Glory. This one, I will say, might be a little bit different. Enchantment for a 6 mana and white. Beginning of upkeep, if you have control no permanents other than Bearing Glory, have no cards in hand, you win the game. I mean, there are ways to do it. It's decently hard to pull off, though. It takes a good amount of setup to actually get there. It's obviously very risky because, like, if this gets removed, you just lose. I mean, that's not really considering, like, you know, just how easy it is to win with it, though. But again, it is an upkeep trigger. If this was just, like, at any point, if this was the only permanent in play, you have no cards in your hand, it would be a lot better, a lot more easy to pull off. This one, I do think, because, like, it is a bit more vicious and kind of, like, how to get to it is a bit more difficult. I'm going to go with a C tier for this one. This one's harder to pull off than the other requirements we've talked about before. Next up, Feldar Sovereign, a 4/6 cat beast, 4/6 mana, vigilance lifelink. At beginning of your upkeep, if you've got 40 more life, you win the game. Again, like, I was going to say near-death experience, but no, not that one. The other one that's like 50 more life, Test of Endurance, you win the game. It's basically the exact same thing, but at 40, which, again, you're in Commander. Cool, you start off with that life total, so, like, all right, you just play this and you win the game, right? That being said, it is an upkeep trigger again, and it is on a creature which is more vulnerable to removal. Again, any kind of a board wipe that's like Wrath of God style, takes it out, and it's gone. So this one, although, again, you're already at that requirement when Commander starts, which is just hilarious. It just works like that. Cool. You win the game. But, like, your opponents have any kind of removal, then no. So there you go. I do think this one's probably more so because it's like a less protected permanent type. I'd say this one's C tier. Maybe some people argue that it like deserves to be right up there with like Test of Endurance essentially because like it's the same thing, but like you don't even have to gain any life to do so. You said to protect your life total. Upkeep, yeah, on a creature, I'd say this is pretty vulnerable. So I will say this one is probably a C tier. Maybe I don't have to worry about the C tier. And now I feel bad about Triska Decaphile, but again, it's on a creature, it's not protected too. Gallifrey Stands. Ledger enchantment for 6 mana in Azorius. Enters the battlefield, return all doctor cards from your graveyard to your hand. Beginning of your upkeep, you may put a doctor creature card from your hand on the battlefield. Then, if you control 13 or more doctors, you win the game. It's a very specific requirement. I mean, the thing that saves this one is Changelings, like, or Maskwood Nexus, essentially. So, again, though, it is an upkeep trigger. So, yeah, like, it's, again, then if you control 13 or more. So, upkeep trigger with that, having to get there. Very specific. It's incredibly specific, I'd say. Like, is it any more difficult than like a Barren Glory though? I don't know. This one I do think it deserves to be in the D tier though. Like, it's very specific on what it does. You need to get like Changelings out or Maskwood Nexus to really like make it work. 13 creatures is a decent amount, but like again, we talked about how like Epic Struggle's like 20. But it's not specific on what they are. That's like any of them. So this one is just like, okay, cool. Like you need a bunch of doctors, a bunch of changelings, or something to turn it into that. So I do think this is probably D tier. Let's just go with that. Goodness gracious. Okay, now I want to move Happily Ever After out of the D tier into the C tier though. I think I do. Because like it's like probably Barren Glory level. Let's do that. Okay, moving on. Hellkite Tyrant. A 6/5 dragon with flying and trample for 6 mana. Deals counter to your player. Gains 12 artifacts. If player controls the game your upkeep, you control 20 artifacts, you win the game. If this wasn't an upkeep trigger, if this was just like, hey, like if you ever have 20 artifacts, you win the game, this would be so easy to pull off. Again, there are so many ways these days to make a bunch of mostly treasures, really. Clues as well, too. But like treasures, also this can steal things too, obviously. You can get there really, really, really quickly. That being said, again, it is an upkeep trigger on a creature. So again, no matter how easy it is to pull off, it's like Feldar Sovereign to me, where it's like, it's on a vulnerable creature, and also it is, again, an upkeep trigger. Yeah, I'd probably put that in the D tier, or C tier, I should say. And then finally, Approach of the Second Sun. If it was cast in your hand, if you cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put it in Summoner's Library, 7th on top, and you gain 7 life. This is, like, one of the few, like, it might be the only one that's just like just wins you the game essentially, like just by itself without doing anything. Literally, you play this card twice, you win. Essentially, that's all this is. You have to get back to it a second time. There are ways to draw back into that, of course. I mean, this is literally just like, do you have the mana for it and the way to draw into it and play it again? Then yeah. It's also again like, yeah, your opponents have to have counter spells to actually stop it. It's not just like, okay, I can remove that. That's sitting in play at the wait to your upkeep. It's not like wait to your upkeep. It's like, okay, I'm casting this, I win. Cast I win cards, there's not many out there, obviously. So this is, in my opinion, like harder to stop just because they have to have counter spells to stop it. And if they don't, they just lose. So I'd say this one's probably an A tier card when it comes to alternative win condition. Okay. Overall, I think things look a little more balanced after moving, I think, Maze's End up and then moving Triska Decaphile down. It's not necessarily like just how I like to do things, obviously. Like where I don't. Sometimes like the B tier is just really full. It just seemed kind of wonky in this one, but I think it's just because like, again, basically it's like, okay, if it's a harder to deal with permanent like an enchantment versus a creature, and it's upkeep trigger, but it's also a reasonable thing to get to, you know, versus like, I mean, not all of them are reasonable in the right deck, right? But like 13 doctors versus like 20 creatures, there's a difference there, okay? Yeah, I think like the B tier is just pretty much like a reasonable requirement to meet. Upkeep trigger on a non-creature or apparently Biovisionary, which again is not an upkeep trigger. Yeah, I feel pretty good, I think, overall. Maybe I'm downplaying the Halo Fountain, but again, like, it's only for specific decks, I think, so I downplayed it there because, like, you need to be in, like, mono white or probably, like, 2 color to actually really pull that off because it is 5 white mana, or, again, have a ton of treasures, or perfect fixing. So I think I put that down there. The bobblehead is really hard to pull off, more hard to pull off than the Doctor, but, like, I think both probably belong in the D tier together. Happily Ever After, I don't know how I feel about moving that one up, but I did. I think overall, pretty good. Like, I think the S tier is definitely just like, hey, no library, you win the game. Like, that is just like all S tier. A tier I feel pretty good about. Helix Pinnacle might move, but because that again is an upkeep, but it is Shroud, so it is protected. Like, it's hyper protected. Hard to deal with. So is Darksteel Reactor, but that does win you on the spot. Yeah, I think I feel pretty good. And again, I hold Reserve Judgment for the Celestial Convergence based on if it's like, I don't know if it got errated to like then if that happens. So you have to wait your upkeep for that, or if not. But if you can just like Solemnity, play that, I have the highest level, I win, then yeah, that's pretty up there. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. I'll probably just go look that up after this regardless. But yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. I think it's interesting just to like look at these things and be like, okay, like alternative wing conditions are kind of like a janky fun thing for the most part. Like some are not. Like Thassas Oracle is like CDH staple, right? But, like, most of them are just, like, janky. Like, you don't see them too often. But, like, oh, yeah, that's cute. But, like, when you, like, really rank these and, like, okay, like, how easy is that to pull off? Like, how concerned should I be with that? Yeah. Or, like, how hard is that to deal with? It's quite fun, I think, to just look at this. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below how wrong I am on some of these, how right I am on some of these, potentially, even. And, of course, as always, oh, and actually, if you are into these cards, I'll try to include a card that's linked in the description below in case you want to build, like, an alternative win condition deck around one of these or, like, all of them or whatnot. Try pull those off. Regardless, thank you, of course, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.